Welcome back everyone to another truck camper video. Today we are in the camper. It is October in Boulder. It's already snowing, which is pretty awesome, so I figured I'd spend this afternoon hanging out in the camper, got the heat on, feeling great. I am just at home, not actually camping, but whatever, it's still fun. I've got the computer set up because today I am editing and sharing with you a video of one of my most recent builds that is finishing out part of the cabinet in the Galley area. Specifically, the area that I'll be storing my food, which has two doors and one little drawer slash door thing. It looks just like this. So I want to show you the full build process of that. Longer video today, going to take you all the way from cutting wood to finishing everything off and showing you almost every detail I can think of. I hope you enjoy that type of content. Most of this work was done over the summer when my brother was in town actually. Not all of it was done then. I did just finish up a little bit yesterday as well. Progress has been a little slow on finalizing all the details of the camper. Because it's usable, I just go and use it. And also I've been really busy finishing up my PhD this semester. And also, if you didn't know, I'm actually spinning out a company with some of my coworkers called Artemis Robotics, and so that's taking up a lot of my time too. YouTube and camping is kind of taking a back seat, but I do plan on continuing to put out videos at least once a week. Gonna stick with this Saturday morning release date, so if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing and following along. With that, it's time to get right into the build. The first thing was, of course, to cut out some wood. I'm again using the Craig pocket screw jig. Worked really well for all the rest of the Galley, so I just keep using that method of joinery. I've been really happy with how it's worked. It's easy to use, it's pretty inexpensive. There's links to everything I'm using down below, so go ahead and check those out if you're not familiar with the tools I'm using. With that, let's get right into the build and check out some of the first cuts and screws to get the frame of the cabinet started. With the frame made, it fit very nicely into the spot it needed to in the Galley. Then it was time to start to make the doors. I'm just using 1/2-inch plywood for all my doors. I've used 1/2-inch plywood for almost everything in this camper. It works perfectly, thin enough to stay somewhat lightweight, sturdy enough to do the task needed. So with that, it was time to cut out the doors to fit this frame. I did, of course, have to have some overlap in the doors. Each door has about a 1/2-inch lip all the way around to fit on top of that cabinet frame. I would share the details in the sketches, but honestly, I was making things up as I went, and also it fits only this camper. I don't think those dimensions would really help you in whatever you're building, so I'm choosing not to share them. If you are curious, go ahead and hit me up in the comments, and I'll be happy to give what details I can if you find those helpful. With that first door done, it was looking great and time to make the second one. I also went ahead and made the top door slash drawer mechanism for the third piece of this cabinet. With all the pieces cut, things were looking really good. It was time to attach those door faces to the frame. I was using hinges I got from a local place in Boulder called Resource, which actually sells used building material. I thought about getting some of the nicer cabinet hinges that I've seen in other van builds and things like that, but I figured those would just be kind of complicated, expensive, and also just not be worth the time. So I'm just using traditional, simple hinges that, again, I got from the used hardware store. With that, I took my time to line everything up. I used a lot of clamps. It was nice that I could, that this piece was rather small, so I could clamp things together with the hinges in place. That helped me get all my drill holes perfectly lined up. It was looking very good, and it wasn't too difficult to do it all. With those hinges in place, I was really happy with how everything was looking. I do want to highlight that I had this kind of top third drawer that's like a door that opens up, and then I'm going to slide out a little box that I'll custom make. I'll actually use the laser cutter at work to make perfectly fit acrylic boxes. I love this extra drawer because it kind of shows how I can utilize every nook and cranny of my camper. Since I am doing this custom build, I figured I'll put my utensils up here, maybe my spices, things like that. Just trying to really get use of every ounce of space I have. With everything mocked up, again, I was really happy with how everything was looking, so it was time to sand and finish the wood. After that sand, it was time for a quick stain just to protect the wood. I chose to go with a stain that matched the rest of the Galley. I thought that would make the most sense. After the stain, it was time for a clear coat. I went with a satin finish on this. I went with gloss on a lot of the rest of the camper, but I thought satin was just the better choice for this. Also, I don't think that either really makes or break the build. Satin's what I had on hand. Also, I should mention, I forgot to show you before that I'm cutting out 2 shelves to go into this cabinet area as well. So of course I'm finishing those alongside the rest of the doors and the frame. After the clear coat, it was going to be time to put everything together, but before I did that, I wanted to finish up cleaning those hinges. Again, those were used hinges with years of paint caked on them, and so I was actually just soaked those in some mineral spirits or paint thinner for a couple of days, and then used a metal brush to get all that paint off. It actually went really smoothly. It was a soothing little exercise. Had a podcast going, just kind of took my time, cleaned them up, brought them back to that nice brass finish, and they actually look really good with my dark wood. And again, all that hardware definitely cost me less than $1 because it was all used. Did, of course, cost me quite a bit in time, but it was a nice activity. Like I mentioned earlier, most of this work was done over the summer. That was when my family was actually out here visiting. They were helping me out with the camper. They helped me out with the sewing project, which I will be showing in the next video. So again, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. But on this particular day, they're mostly just hanging out. I was in the garage putting on the trim pieces, some black trim on the edging of all my cabinet doors. And my brother and sister and wife were all just hanging out in the camper having a pizza break. So I joined them for that too. I decided to go with some black trim on all the pieces of wood. It's only me here working by myself. No one else is helping.
Hey.
Good, man. How are you?
A lot better now that you're here.
We're ready for a pizza. Oh, pizza party. Oh my God.
After the pizza break, it was time to install everything for the final time. Really made sure I took my time using hand tools, didn't want to use a drill and strip anything, but put the doors and hinges all onto the cabinet face for the final time. With everything installed, the one thing I still needed to do was put knobs on these doors to act as handles. For this, I actually did go with a specialty item. I used some pop-out like door knob locking mechanism that's really popular in the boat and I think in the RV world as well. Of course, I'll link to those below. It's really cool because they have a locking mechanism, so when you're driving, the doors will not open. They're locked shut. But once you're finished, once you're parked, you can pop them out, they become a handle, and all of a sudden everything opens and closes no problem. So I thought it would be really good for the truck camper since we're off-road a lot, bouncing around. I wanted to make sure my doors stayed closed. How they work specifically, I will talk about in the shop.
Pretty good.
So I'm installing these door handles for the cabinetry. These are actually a really cool design. I will link to them below. These are very popular on boats and also on RVs. And what's so neat about them is, let me show you real quick.
Are they earthquake proof?
They're earthquake proof, that's right. So the door is gonna live here. When these are not in use, when you're like traveling or something, it'll live down, and this is recessed in there. But then when you...
Recessed.
And then when you camp though, you press these in, and all of a sudden that pops out, and you can see how that's your handle. And when that happened, you can see this mechanism here. Driving, this is pushed in, this locks out, and there's a latch to hold it in place. Then when you're in camp, simply undo it. These are free to go, and you can open your cabinet doors no problem. So. As you can see, I was having some trouble installing these specialty knobs into my cabinets. They're designed to work with a very specific width board, and I was not using that width, so I had to actually use some spacers to pull the back mechanism off of the door, so that way the front side sat flush with the door. That took a while to figure out. I tried a few different options. In the end, I just ended up going with a couple of washers to just kind of back off the mechanism. I also had a lot of trouble lining up the lock mechanism. The first 2 attempts I botched pretty poorly. That's because when these handles are in and sitting flush, everything's great and the door is locked in place. And then when you go to unlock it, you're going to press that button in. When you do that, the locking mechanism is actually going to move out before it kind of recesses and gets out of the way. And I hadn't left enough room for it to pop and move out. It was hitting my latch, and so everything just wasn't working. It was a mess. I ended up having to get out the chisel and kind of like chisel out some wood. The back side of my door frame doesn't look super professional anymore, but it does work in the end. I would strongly suggest, if you are going to use this, to go ahead and try it on a scrap piece before you do anything. I should have done that more, but I still managed to make everything work. The front sides look great. Who cares about what the inside of a cabinet looks like anyways? Still, after those first 2 attempts, each one getting a little easier, the 3rd attempt, when I was putting it onto my top drawer, everything went perfectly smoothly and came out awesome. With the 3rd knob installed, it was time to finally put this door frame into the camper galley. For this, I was just using metal corner braces. I figured that would be a simple, easy solution. I, of course, could have put wood on there, done all sorts of stuff. Just went ahead with the metal corner braces from the hardware store. Cheap and easy enough to do. The only thing that was kind of tough was that I couldn't get a drill in there, so I had to do all my drilling by hand, which took a little bit of time, but no problem at all. It was an enjoyable activity that I actually just finished up last night. I think it really came out awesome, which you'll see in the end here, where I'll show you the final installed product. that really wraps up this build video, building out this galley area. Again, this is mostly going to be for my food, utensils, spices, things like that. It'll probably be the only place for food and dry goods. Be really nice to have a dedicated space for that in the camper, that I can leave things like a can of soup, some ramen, whatever it is, just have it in the camper ready to go. Also, because it's by the door, I can get it easy enough when I'm out tailgating, things like that. The camper's really starting to look like a final product, and it's pretty awesome. Thanks to you for following along. I really enjoy the feedback I get on these videos. If you have questions about this build, about my camper in general, go ahead and hit me up in the comments below. I love to hear from you folks. I love when you share my videos with other people. It really gets me jazzed up to make more. And so do please continue to do that. And thanks for everything you've done so far. If you haven't already, again, do consider subscribing. We've got some great content coming out. Next video will be the sewing project inside, where I actually sew the curtains and the cushions for this camper that you can see already. Almost done editing up that video. It'll be shot right here again, so hopefully that should be out next week. Thanks again for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.